One day at the hospital where I work, I ran into a friend of my mom's named Karen. She looked at me in surprise and said, "What are you doing here? You're out of place. If you're looking for a job, you won't find one. Go back home." Karen's comment shocked the doctors around us. They didn't know what to say. I thought, what is she talking about? I hope this doesn't turn into a big issue. It might be too late already. It seemed Karen didn't realize that making an enemy of me was not a good idea. I couldn't keep quiet anymore and confronted her. "Karen, you really don't hold back, do you? Or do you just not get it?" Looking confused, she answered, "Huh? What are you talking about?" "My name is Olivia. I'm 37 years old, a mother of an active 9-year-old daughter and a playful 2-year-old son. My husband, Jackson, who is 3 years younger than me, is a dedicated nurse at a general hospital. I used to work too, but since having our second child, I've been on maternity leave. We once lived in a small 3-bedroom apartment, but before our son was born, we moved into a second-hand house with a loan. It needs some work but could be a cozy home. It has a big garden for the kids to play in and a rooftop balcony with a calming view. The house is old, which adds to its charm, and my husband and I really like it. Near our house is a beautiful park where the kids can play all they want, and it's our little paradise on weekends. Late in my second pregnancy, I met a mom in that park who introduced herself as Karen. Since her daughter and mine are the same age and often play together, Karen and I became friends and had many conversations. Karen always wears bright designer clothes, and her daughter is dressed in well-known brands. When I found out Karen worked as a surgeon at a well-known hospital, I guessed it might be the same one where my husband Jackson works. Out of curiosity, I asked her about it, and to my surprise, she did work there. Excited by this coincidence, she said with sparkling eyes, "This is such a coincidence. I'd love to meet your husband." So we decided to invite her over for tea the next weekend. On the promised Sunday, Karen and her daughter came to our house. But as soon as she walked in, she started looking around suspiciously, as if she was searching for something. "This house feels old. Did you inherit it from your family?" she asked. "No," I replied. "We bought it secondhand and moved in just last year. It is indeed old." As my husband spoke, Karen examined each piece of furniture as if she was evaluating its worth. We were taken aback by her rudeness. Meanwhile, the children played happily in the playroom, and only the adults were quietly enjoying tea in the living room. "Jackson, which department do you work in at the hospital?" Karen asked. "I work in the emergency department," Jackson said, a bit embarrassed. "But actually, I'm not a doctor, I'm a nurse. I support the doctors." "Really? You're a nurse?" she asked. "Yes, I graduated from medical school, but haven't passed the licensing exam yet. I plan to retake it next year." Karen's eyes widened, and she seemed to choose her words carefully. It's quite unusual to hear of someone graduating from medical school and not passing the licensing exam. Her next words made us uncomfortable. "Can a nurse's salary really support a family with children? Are you managing the mortgage payments and living expenses okay? Or is that why you chose an old secondhand house?" Her questions hurt us, and all we could do was give an erased smile. Karen made several more rude remarks, and we were speechless. After she left, I apologized to Jackson for the uncomfortable situation. "Jackson, I'm really sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable because of what Karen did. Maybe I should keep some distance from her from now on." "Don't worry about it," Jackson reassured me with a warm smile. "It was unexpected, but her personality certainly stands out. It's good to connect with other moms in the neighborhood, but I decided it would be best to not get too involved with Karen in the future." As time passed, new changes came to our family. I reached full term and safely gave birth to our second son. After celebrating his first birthday, I started to think about returning to work. Luckily, Jack's parents live nearby and have been a great help with the kids. Then, one day, I had some business at the hospital where my husband works. With some time before my meeting, I grabbed a hot coffee at the hospital cafe. and was taking a moment to relax when I heard a familiar voice behind me. It was Karen. Oh my, isn't that Olivia? It's been such a long time. Hello, Karen. How have you been? Good. What brings you here today? Are you here to see Jackson? Maybe for a job interview or something? It must be tough on just Jack's income, right? Her tone was sarcastic, and she had a smug look as she spoke. Wanting to avoid a troublesome conversation, I responded lightly, well, something like that. However, Karen continued to pry, looking me over. This hospital has various stores, right? So where are you working part-time? At the convenience store or maybe the restaurant? After a brief silence, I curtly replied, sorry, it's about time for my appointment. I quickly left the cafe and moved swiftly through the hospital. I took the elevator to the top floor. My destination was the director's office, where I had an important job consultation. After about an hour of discussion, I headed to the large auditorium of the university for my next appointment. There was an important announcement scheduled that afternoon with all the hospital staff gathered. On the way to the auditorium by chance, I ran into Jackson. Jackson, that's great. After the director's talk, let's go for lunch together, I suggested. Sounds good. It's a bit of a walk, but how about pasta? He offered with a smile. The pasta place behind the hospital sounds good. I haven't been there in a long time. I'm actually looking forward to it, I agreed happily. It had been a while since I had been to the hospital, so lunch with my husband was a rare treat. In the hallway to the auditorium, I ran into several doctors and engaged in brief conversations while exchanging greetings. Jackson moved ahead quickly, and I followed at a leisurely pace towards the passageway leading to the auditorium. I met some colleague doctors. Olivia, it's really been a while, and I heard you had a child. Congratulations, they said warmly. Another doctor joined in. Olivia, you were such a big help here. We've been in quite a stir since you left, he said with a laugh, hinting at their struggles. Then another asked with interest, is your turn imminent? The reunion was comforting, filled with nostalgia and relief to see my colleagues well. But the atmosphere quickly changed when Karen appeared. Olivia, why are you here? Karen asked curiously. Are you heading to the auditorium by any chance? Yes, that's right. I have some business, I responded modestly yet clearly with several colleagues around. But Karen's questions grew more pressing. But the gathering is only for doctors and nurses, right? Why would a part-timer be here? She asked, not hiding her skepticism. Her remark brought silence to the corridor, a silence that felt heavy. A part-time lady like her, a doctor muttered. Is she okay? Another murmured worriedly. I tried to ignore Karen's words, not wanting to stir up unnecessary trouble. However, Karen seemed only more provoked. Why are you ignoring me? It's like you don't think at all. You, Karen exclaimed with a sneer. Lost your way? The auditorium isn't this way. If you're looking for part-time work, go the other direction. Now, please leave, she commanded, looking down on me. The doctors present were appalled by Karen's behavior, but they stood by me, trying to diffuse the situation. They raised their voices in unison against Karen. Disappointment and anger were evident on their faces, and their voices contained a strong sense of rejection toward her actions. Hold on, what kind of way is that to speak to Olivia? Don't you have any manners? Apologize to her right now, they demanded, not just disapproving but reproaching Karen's conduct. The doctors gathered, looking tense, and confronted Karen. The atmosphere was charged with tension. Faced with the united front against her, Karen appeared confused and at a loss for words. What's going on? I just pointed out that she doesn't belong here. The meeting is only for relevant personnel, and she doesn't fit the bill, right? She tried to justify her stance. But my patience had reached its limit. With a composed tone, but with content sharp as a blade, I addressed Karen. Karen, you really are brave, aren't you? Or is it that you simply can't read the room? I critiqued calmly. Unable to find a rebuttal, she stared back at me perplexed. How? What did you just say? I calmly made my point clear. You'll understand soon enough the consequences your actions and careless remarks could bring. The doctors around us showed no sympathy for Karen. Look, your future here is now utterly uncertain, they told her sharply. You might want to start looking for another job while you still can. They nodded to each other, clearly having cornered Karen, who was still unable to hide her panic and anger. So why on earth are all of you defending this non-regular employee so much? I don't understand why you rate her so highly, she raised her voice. The conversation among the doctors echoed in the hallway. Are you the new surgical specialist who joined last year? One doctor asked her. So that's why you don't know Olivia. That's quite pitiful, another added. Karen, with anger on her face and indignation in her tone, retorted, What can you explain what you mean by that? Her anger stemmed from the belief that judging people by their professional standing, regardless of their duties as a doctor, was against human dignity. The fact that someone with such values was in our workplace was deeply shocking to me, and I couldn't help but feel distrustful. Karen seemed unaware, but in fact, I was the very person she should respect the most. The other doctors completely ignored Karen's questions and left her with cold stares, quietly leaving the scene. Well, Karen, we can talk more about this later. You may find my husband's position as a nurse pitiable, but no matter how hard you try, you can never be like Jackson. Besides, the fact that you find meaning in competing shows a great misunderstanding on your part, I said. Karen became flustered. Wait a minute, who on earth are you? You're not just a part-timer, are you? She raised her voice. I smiled secretly and replied, As I've already said, you'll come to understand shortly. With that, I hurried off toward the auditorium. As I entered, a large number of doctors had already gathered, and the director stood in front of the screen as most of the attendees had arrived. Everyone, thank you for gathering here during your busy schedules. Today, I would like to discuss the future direction of our hospital. He began and then proceeded to make an important announcement. Seeing Jackson in the crowd, he approached me and whispered, Olivia, good timing. I happened to overhear a bit earlier. Was there some trouble with Karen? Yes, she did point out something minor, but it's not a big deal. Interestingly, it seems she has misunderstood me for a part-time worker at this hospital. I replied, and Jack looked shocked. He responded, No way, Olivia as a part-timer. We couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous the situation was. During this, the director finished explaining the annual business plan and moved on to an important personnel announcement. As you all know, our hospital has enough doctors and nurses. To further improve our medical services, we plan to start overseas training programs. The first training is scheduled in 3 months, and we will select 6 doctors and 6 nurses for it, he announced. This news was met with cheers from the doctors, and everyone was excited about the opportunity. Overseas training was a great chance to learn about the latest medical practices worldwide, and since it was the hospital's first initiative of its kind, everyone was thrilled. The director then said, Now, let's move on to announcing the selected 11. I remarked with a slight surprise, Look, the medical students have already been chosen. Jack listened silently next to me, waiting for the announcement to continue. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Karen. With her excellent clinical skills and remarkable treatment results, the director announced. There was no dispute in her selection. Surprisingly, Karen, who had just been in a conflict, was the first chosen as a trainee. The applause and cheers in the hall seemed to celebrate each accomplishment and effort. As Karen stepped forward, whispers of her notable achievements in medicine spread, highlighting her recognition among peers. The director continued with expectation. Now let's proceed with announcing the names of the rest who have been selected. A silence of mixed tension and anticipation fell as the names of the chosen 11 were called out one by one. Although Jack's name was not called this time, his expression showed no disappointment. He quietly watched with a sense of celebration as each selected individual stepped forward. Addressing the 11 lined up on stage, the director asked, "Are all of you ready in spirit for the training? Please share a word about your enthusiasm and determination." He encouraged them gently. Each gave a brief but resolute speech, reaffirming their strong intentions. After everyone had spoken, it was finally Karen's turn. She spoke with proper decorum yet confidently. "I am truly grateful for this training opportunity. I aim to help our hospital progress further with the advanced medical techniques I will learn abroad," she said with a polished greeting. Then she turned slowly towards where we were seated and continued in her assertive tone. "However, this hospital has inexperienced nurses who continue to fail the national exam and bold individuals who try to attend medical conferences despite not being regular staff. I intend to improve and transform all these aspects." Karen's bold statement changed the mood in the room, and the looks directed at her turned cold. Her words brought out the hospital's tensions and showed how risky youthful overconfidence can be. The director's intense gaze seemed to freeze the room, adding gravity to the situation. Maintaining his calm, the director asked Karen, "Karen, that comment was about those two sitting there, wasn't it?" His smile was calm, but didn't reach his eyes. Confidently nodding, Karen replied, "Yes, exactly. There are those unfit for this noble assembly." Remaining composed, the director then called out unexpectedly, "Olivia, could you come forward, please?" With this invitation, I, who had been just an observer, suddenly became the center of attention. Confused and beginning to lose her confidence, Karen asked, "Why her? Why are you calling her name?" The director, showing disappointment towards Karen, said in a quiet voice, "Karen, I am disappointed in you. Olivia, please introduce yourself to everyone." Taking a deep breath, I started, "Hello, everyone. It's been a while. I am Olivia, the chief of the medical department. I apologize for any inconvenience my maternity leave may have caused, but I will be resuming my duties next month. I look forward to working with you all again." Karen's voice couldn't hide her surprise. "Wait, she's the chief of the medical department." Her eyes searched the room for confirmation. Indeed, as the head of the medical team, I was about to return to my role. I had taken a 3-year parental leave to give birth to and raise my first son. The director, confirming the truth, added quietly, "By the way, Olivia is my daughter." His words rang clear in the room, clearly defining the situation. Karen's expression shifted from confusion to shock. Her mouth opens as if she wanted to object, but no words came out. The room, filled with hospital staff, couldn't hold back, and suppressed laughter spilled out at the unexpected turn of events. The director spoke in a relaxed tone, "Karen, for this upcoming overseas training, you have been assigned to be the team leader. Your deployment will be in a conflict zone in the Middle East. There is a shortage of both medication and medical equipment, and it's going to be very challenging. It will be interesting to see how well your skills hold up there. But don't worry, Olivia will be there to support you. Try to learn as much as you can under her guidance." Proud, Karen responded with dignity, "I am a doctor too. Although I have no experience working abroad, my clinical skills and treatment records are first class. I will not allow myself to be underestimated." I replied to Karen with a calm but firm voice, "Let me make one thing clear, Karen. In the near future, I am going to take over the directorship of this hospital from my father. Do you understand the weight of this fact?" Karen's expression stiffened. Seeing this, I continued, "Yes, it seems you understand well. Depending on my decision, your future in this hospital may be affected." Karen could no longer hide her agitation. "I haven't heard such a thing," she muttered. Jackson intervened calmly, adding quietly, "Karen, we had not informed you about that matter beforehand. Your disrespectful attitude towards Olivia may well be something you deeply regret in the future." Towards the end of the meeting, the director stated firmly, "Please, everyone, a bit of silence. Karen in the discussions here, in the end, results are everything. No matter how excellent you may be, that is just one aspect. What's important is the results you can achieve in this hospital, and on that front, I have great expectations of you." Karen fell silent at the director's words, bowed her head, and nodded without saying anything. The director concluded, "Today's meeting is adjourned." As his words ended, everyone in the auditorium stood up and returned to their respective places. Stepping out of the director's office leisurely, I casually said, "Shall we go for lunch? I've got a craving for pasta today." Side by side with Jackson, we left the meeting behind us. I started walking towards our favorite pasta place behind the hospital, leaving the building behind. As we were about to pass the small smoking area set up behind the hospital, I spotted Karen. She was deep in thought, taking a drag of her cigarette. When our eyes met, Karen awkwardly looked away. Just then, a loud crash caught our attention. A car had rear-ended another in an accident. Jack and I sprang into action immediately. The area was nearly deserted, so it was crucial for us to move quickly to help. "Are you okay?" Jack called out with concern and quickly checked on the people involved in the accident. One was the driver in the car that was hit, and another was a pedestrian who happened to be walking by. Karen also rushed to the accident scene, but seemed overwhelmed by the chaos. Acting on my medical instincts, I began to give directions. "Jackson, quickly get that man into a safe position and check his pulse," I instructed. Jack moved without wasting any time, following my instructions promptly. As an emergency nurse, Jack had received special training, including attending surgeries I conducted. I had trained him rigorously, which helped him develop exceptional practical skills compared to other nurses. I then directed Karen with calm and clarity. "Karen, check if that elderly person is bleeding and assess their level of consciousness." However, Karen seemed paralyzed by the seriousness of the situation, standing still without moving. My voice grew firmer as I insisted, "Karen, do you understand what I'm saying? Please respond quickly." Her voice was tense. Karen was clearly overwhelmed, and with an unstable voice, she replied, "Ah, yes, what should I do?" Her panic was evident and seemed to add to the confusion at the scene. I rebuked Karen firmly yet patiently. "Don't you know what to do in an emergency? I doubt you're even a surgeon." Karen responded with what could be perceived as anger. "That's not true. There's nothing I can't do." But her actions, though active, clearly lacked effective measures, and she was just bustling about the scene. I then looked to Jackson. "Jackson, could you measure that elderly person's blood pressure and make sure there's no bleeding?" I gave the orders calmly. Jackson promptly replied, "Understood," and began to manage the situation. The accident scene started to regain some order with our swift response. Jack spoke to Karen with unusual sternness. "Karen, come over here and help." Karen reacted to Jack's command. "What do you mean? A nurse asking for such a thing?" she complained. But Jack cut her off. "This is no place for someone who can't do anything. If you're not going to help in this critical moment where lives are at stake, please step back," he said decisively. Karen was at a loss for words and stepped back from the scene silently. Jackson assessed the situation and reported to me, "The vitals are stable, but there might be internal damage. We should conduct a thorough examination as soon as possible." As professionals, we showed readiness to collaborate with other medical staff around us, doing our best for the patients. I led the response steadily. "Let's begin the procedures then. And the driver over there seems disoriented, but I don't see any serious symptoms. Let's move him out of here. Karen, could you please call an ambulance on your cell phone?" Despite my instructions, Karen stood frozen, unable to move. I addressed her with suspicion. "Karen, I'm speaking to you. Do you hear me?" Karen seemed confused, hesitantly murmuring, What's the number for the ambulance again?" Jack intervened. "Just give me that phone." He stepped in and took over, arranging for the ambulance. About 10 minutes later, police and fire department personnel arrived, and the once chaotic accident scene started to be sorted out gradually. People gathered, including doctors, department heads, medical students, and even professors. Without being disturbed by this, I spoke to Karen with calm and stern emphasis on the gravity of the situation. Karen, to be frank, your actions earlier were more of a hindrance than a help. What exactly can you say you've accomplished? I posed the direct question. Karen was silent, unable to answer. In the medical field, every minute, every second can determine the outcome. This is not a place to protect your ego, I continued. Karen's voice was barely audible as she apologized. I'm sorry. The crowd at the accident scene quietly observed their exchange, and the director himself was also present. Karen just seemed out of place and embarrassed. I continued, Karen, you've looked down on Jack as just a nurse, but the fact is, your positions are different. There's no meaning in comparing you and Jackson. He is one of the most competent nurses in this hospital. Can't you see now how powerless and insufficient your actions were in this situation? Karen stubbornly retorted, if I had more experience in emergency situations, I could handle it perfectly well. But Jack sensed the uncertainty behind her words and calmly pointed out her flaw. You're always driven by a desire to have your accomplishments recognized, but your actual skills in the field are still immature. You've just demonstrated that yourself, he asserted. He continued, you say you'll gain experience in emergency treatment in the future, but this moment is also a practical situation. Given your current state, it's unlikely you'll have further opportunities to experience the field in the future. Karen's confidence began to show cracks, and she seemed on the verge of tears, aware of the eyes around her. Yet the medical field, dealing with lives, demands proper judgment and strictness. Therefore, I had to make a tough decision that would impact Karen's future. Karen, I regret to say this, but your name will be removed from the Overseas Training Program candidate list, I declared. Karen was taken aback. What? I looked to the director for confirmation. Father, this decision is acceptable, correct? The director nodded deeply. No problem. This incident has given me a clear understanding of her capabilities. I have great expectations for Jack. We have always selected trainees based on their grades, but it may be necessary to reconsider our selection system in light of this. His quiet but firm response marked a complete defeat for Karen. With a calm but resolute voice, I advised Karen, it's important for you to relearn from the basics. Only then will you have the right to compete at the same level as Jack. Also, take to heart the dangers of judging a person's worth by their appearance. While I considered letting you go from the workplace, I have decided to give you one more chance, the last chance. Make the most of this opportunity and show us your full effort, I advised sternly yet justly. Afterward, they quietly left the scene, but the looks from the doctors around Karen were cold, filled with disappointment and disapproval. Their evaluation of her future was seemingly already set. Weeks passed, and the long-awaited departure day for the overseas training arrived. Jack and I headed to the airport, excited to acquire new knowledge and experience. I heard that Karen resigned from the hospital a month after the incident. She couldn't handle the cold stares from those around her and chose to put her pride first. Personally, I thought that was for the best. A doctor who prioritizes pride over everything else shouldn't be responsible for patients' lives, and no one would want to trust their life to such a person. On the way to the airport, I spoke to Jackson with hopeful words. Jackson, let's use our skills to make this hospital one of the most famous in the world. Sharing that passion and reaffirming his determination, Jackson replied, that's right. I need to work even harder and get my medical license as soon as possible. And so, I quietly made a promise to myself again, reaffirming my strong commitment as a doctor to fulfill my duties. Seats aren't available for non-family, so you'll have to stand. When I went to a restaurant to celebrate my grandson Eric's milestone, I found there wasn't a seat for me in the designated room. As I exchanged glances with the relatives who arrived at the same time, Olivia, the wife of my eldest son Jacob, threw a shocking statement at me. I felt a rush of anger, but a tap on the shoulder from my brother Patrick calmed me down. I said, "I guess we should head home then," and to my surprise, everyone immediately responded with yes to my question. We made a U-turn on the spot. Despite hearing shouts and the loud noise of breaking dishes behind us, I ignored them and headed home, where I immediately took a certain action. My name is Kelly. I'm a 51-year-old office worker for a company that runs multiple restaurants. Although I'm officially listed as a store advisor, I mostly work from home. This is partly because I was born with a handicap in one leg. I don't use a wheelchair, but I can't walk without a cane, making me hesitant to go to crowded downtown areas or use public transportation. Embarrassingly, I don't visit the restaurants my company operates very often. Of course, I know this isn't good, but since losing my husband Jack suddenly to illness 3 years ago, my life has felt empty. Now I live alone in a smaller condo arranged for me by my brother Patrick. I gave the condo where I lived with Jack to my married son and his wife about 2 years ago. Some people ask if I'm lonely, but when weighing the freedom of being alone against the loneliness, the appeal of living freely wins out. Part of this is because my relationship with my son's wife Olivia is terrible. Olivia is 10 years younger than my son Jacob, currently 25. She is stylish, beautiful, and was popular as a college student model while attending a prestigious university. I've heard she appeared on TV several times. She was expected to become a news reporter with the title of Miss University, but she got pregnant with Jacob's child during the summer of her junior year, and they had a shotgun wedding. At first, she took a leave of absence from college with plans to return after giving birth, but she suffered from severe morning sickness and her health got worse. Olivia worried that her beauty would be ruined and threw a tantrum, saying, "I don't want to be seen in public looking like this," and dropped out of college. At the same time, she became irritable over her uncontrollable physical condition and started behaving hysterically towards my son Jacob. "Mom, please, no matter what I do, thinking it's for the best," Olivia just screams and rejects everything. "The house is a mess, and it's bad for the baby's prenatal environment. I need your help," begged Jacob. So my husband and I decided to live with our son and his wife in the large condominium we had bought, intending to live there until we died. However, living together turned out to be challenging as Olivia treated me like a servant with her haughty attitude. "Don't dawdle, bring me my smoothie and crackers to bed quickly. Haven't I told you numerous times how sick I feel if I wake up with an empty stomach because of my morning sickness?" she would yell. And when she wasn't yelling about that, she'd scream, "Why are you washing my clothes with your old hag's clothes? No matter how expensive the fabric softener is, it won't keep the old hag smell from transferring to my clothes." Seeing enough, Jack would scold her firmly. Is it common sense in this house to harass a pregnant woman? But she would just snap back. Even when Jack suggested that Jacob talk to her, Jacob would say, "It's impossible." Nothing makes sense to Olivia right now. "I wish you could just deal with it, Mom," laughing it off. As infuriating as it was, the fact that Olivia was pregnant made it so we had no choice but to endure her behavior. Had Jack been his usual self, perhaps he could have taken a firmer stand against Olivia and Jacob. But looking back, Jack's body was probably already being slowly ravaged by disease at that time. Olivia had cluttered Jack's study and living room, which should have been his places of relaxation after hard work, with her beauty devices, leaving no space to rest. Even trying to soak in the large bathtub we had ordered to relieve his fatigue was impossible. "Taking a bath with that old bugger gives me the chills. Just use the shower stall instead," she would say. I faced such verbal abuse, yet Jack would say, "Arguing with those two just tires me out more," deciding it was best to endure it himself. Seeing Jack's attitude, Olivia and Jacob instead of reflecting, escalated their tyrannical behavior even further. As I busily managed the household chores, dragging my ailing leg around, they paid no mind. "I never want to end up like that disgraceful old hag, no matter how old I get," she said, insulting me to the visiting beautician while pointing at me. The beautician was at a loss for words at the sheer nastiness of their comments, but Olivia didn't care. "We really wanted to hire a younger servant, but you know how hard it is to find someone reliable these days, right? So we settled," she declared. Even as these words were spoken, I continued my chores in silence, my leg aching and my heart full of anger towards Olivia and Jacob. As these days went on, Olivia's due date arrived, and she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Holding his first grandson, named Eric, Jack teared up a bit when the tiny hand tightly grasped his finger. Seeing this, I nearly cried myself. The innocent smile of the baby made me want to wash away all resentments and negative feelings. But that thought was short-lived when suddenly I received news that Jack had collapsed at work. Panicked, I rushed to the hospital while trying to contact Jacob on his mobile phone, but it remained unread with no return call. Reluctantly, I asked the company to contact him on his work-issued mobile phone, but that too was in vain with no response. Hoping at least to let Jack see his grandson Eric, I contacted Olivia's mobile phone. I asked her to bring Eric to the hospital. "I'm in the middle of a hair treatment at the salon, so it's impossible," she laughed and refused. "Then I'll come to the salon to pick up Eric myself." Do you really think I'd entrust a baby to an old hag who can barely walk with a cane? With that, she hung up the phone. Still, I didn't give up and kept calling Olivia and Jacob's mobile phones. But in the midst of this, the operating room light went off. Then the doctor came out and informed me that Jack had just passed away. My memories of the time that followed are a complete blank. All I can recall is a hazy scene, as if viewed through frosted glass. After the funeral, which took place amid this haze, I came down with the flu. "Olivia, the baby might catch it, which would be terrible," she exclaimed dramatically and told me to leave the house immediately. Already emotionally damaged by Jack's sudden death and physically weakened by fever and cough, I had no energy left to argue with hysterical Olivia. Barely managing to get dressed, I left the room but collapsed in the elevator hall entrance. Thankfully, the concierge called an ambulance, and I was rushed to the hospital. According to the doctors, I was on the verge of pneumonia. Later, my brother, his wife, and my nephew heard about my condition and took care of everything. "There's no need to visit the hospital. She's been admitted, she's safe, and it would be terrible if the baby caught something," Jacob and Olivia said, not even bothering to visit. Outraged by their attitude, my nephew and his wife suggested I stay with them for a while instead of returning to the condo, where I'd just be exploited by Olivia again. Returning to the condo would mean resuming a servant-like existence before even regaining my strength. However, staying at my brother Patrick's house, where my sister-in-law's parents lived, was not an option due to infection prevention concerns. My nephew's offer was a welcome one. Deciding to accept their kind offer, I planned to first return to the condo to retrieve Jack's photos and personal items left behind. My nephew's wife, Helen, who was worried about the situation, decided to come with me. When we visited the condominium for the first time in about a month, we found it in a terrible state. What is this mess? Dirty glasses and dishes were piled up, and the garbage disposal was clogged. The living room was no different, with delivery food containers scattered everywhere. The bathrooms and bath were in a dire state as well. I wondered how they could raise a baby in such filth. As Helen and I stood there in disbelief, Olivia, apparently already drunk though it was just past 3:00 p.m., returned with a couple of friends. Noticing us standing in the living room turned into a garbage house, Olivia looked surprised for a moment, but then quickly put on her usual smirking face and said, "So you're finally back. Then get to cleaning this room right away. It got all messy because the old hag slacked off." Helen was furious at this brazen attitude. She quickly approached Olivia and said, "How dare you speak to Jacob's mom like that after all she has done for you? And you just kicked her out the moment she got the flu." But Olivia and her friends just laughed it off. Birds of a feather flock together. Friends of unreasonable people are unsurprisingly unreasonable themselves, they said. Then, as if they had a great idea, they added, "Why don't you just leave for good? This place is going to be Jacob's through inheritance anyway. The old hag can just go back to her parents' house." As Helen grew even angrier, I somehow remained calm. Considering their outrageous behavior so far, it was only a matter of time before Olivia and the others would try to drive me out. There was no reason for me to stay any longer with such unpleasant people, so I called Noah to ask for help, and we managed to move out all my personal belongings that had sentimental value that day. Still, when I looked back at the condominium for the last time, the memory of deciding this house would be where I'd die and Jack's smiling face when we made that decision brushed my heart. I'm sure Jack would understand this decision, I felt certain. After that, I moved into a condominium near my parents' home that Patrick had arranged for me and returned to my job, which had been on hold since before Jack passed away. I also adopted a rescue cat, which I couldn't have before due to Jack's allergy, and started living with it. Though Jacob and I work at the same company and see each other when I go to the office, we hardly ever talk. However, one day I received an unusual message from Jacob. Curious about the sudden contact, I read the message. It was about planning a milestone celebration for Eric at a restaurant this coming weekend. It seems Olivia has invited a large number of guests, including her parents, relatives, and friends. "The balance will be off if no one from our side of the family attends," he said, wanting to invite me and the relatives. "Why don't you ask Jack's side of the family then?" I suggested, but it seems they had already refused. Indeed, Jack's relatives live quite far away, and it's not a distance easily traveled back and forth. Moreover, today is already Friday, and there's hardly any time to prepare to leave the house. It's understandable that they refused. I was about to refuse again when Jacob, sensing my hesitation, said, "I'm sorry for everything that's happened. For Eric's sake, could you consider our request?" Though I was indeed angry with Jacob and Olivia, Eric himself is innocent. Remembering how happy Jack was about Eric's birth, I considered it. I didn't want to spoil the celebration. After hanging up and giving it some thought, I decided to attend and sent Jacob a message to let him know. On the day of the celebration, my brother and his wife, my nephew and his wife, my uncle and aunt, their children, and other relatives gathered in front of the restaurant. Helen said, "I'm here today not for that couple but for Kelly." While calming her down, we were led to the room, the largest in the restaurant, with low tables and chairs. This setup would be difficult for me with my mobility issues, so I asked the staff for a chair that was a bit taller. However, Olivia interrupted. "There's no extra seat, so just stand," she said loudly with her arms crossed. Seeing Olivia's smirking face, I felt more dumbfounded than angry, wondering how she could be so mean even now. Then, impulsively, I called out to my relatives, "Shall we go back home then?" Without hesitation, they all responded, "Yes." The guests on Olivia's side became unsettled by this. Olivia's parents came forward, apologizing to me and my brother and his wife, while hurriedly scolding Olivia. But Olivia, scolded in front of her relatives and acquaintances, became angry and started throwing anything she could get her hands on, like vases, framed pictures, and dishes. Screams, shouts, and the sound of things breaking filled the room, but we left without paying any further attention. Once the relatives and I had left the restaurant, Patrick and I decided to hold a strategy meeting in preparation for what was to come. The company where I, the late Jack, and Jacob worked was originally built by my grandfather. It's a family-owned business where our relatives own more than half of all shares, with my real brother Patrick currently serving as the CEO. Jack was Patrick's close friend since college and joined the company at Patrick's request after graduating. He married a woman who was a clerk there and had a son, Jacob. But after a long illness, his wife passed away when Jacob was in the 8th grade. Patrick, seeing Jack juggling work and home life alone, suggested I marry him, probably concerned about my future due to my disability and lack of social connections. Initially hesitant, I was swayed by Jack's words. "I'm a single father with a child, but I intend to take good care of you. Would you become part of our family?" Jacob, who became my stepson, neither showed hostility nor warmth towards me, his new stepmother. Believing it was unreasonable to expect more from Jacob so soon after losing his mom, I resolved to do my best as a stepmother when Jacob was about to graduate from college. "I want to work at the same company as Dad and Mom," Jacob said, which moved me to tears. However, this peaceful period ended when Jacob had a shotgun wedding with Olivia. After living with Olivia for a while, I couldn't ignore her domineering behavior and decided to have Jacob firmly speak to his wife. I waited for Jacob in the company's underground parking lot, but instead of seeing him alone, I saw Jacob with his arm around a married colleague. Unaware I was standing just a pillar away, they were getting intimately close. The shock was enough, but then Jacob told the woman, "What if someone sees us here? We'd both get fired." She confidently replied, "I won't make such a mistake, and even if my affair gets exposed, the company can't fire me. After all, I'm the president's step-nephew." Unaware of my shocked state, Jacob continued, "My real mom was just a country girl, but my stepmother, even if just in name, is the company's executive vice president and the granddaughter of the founder. So she owns a significant share of the stocks and assets. When she passes, all of that will be mine." Then he drove off with the woman. Overwhelmed by what I had just heard, I returned home, unable to tell Jack. Replaying Jacob's words in my head, I gradually understood why Olivia always spoke so disdainfully of me and why Jacob never reprimanded her. It was as if peeling back layers to reveal the truth. Olivia likely received a similar explanation from the beginning of their marriage. I'm just a stepmother after all, and they believe I'm merely a tool they can treat however they please until they inherit the estate. Both Jacob and the grandchild yet to be born feel they are entitled to everything. But there's a truth neither Olivia nor Jacob understands. In reality, Jacob and I haven't gone through an adoption process. Legally, Jacob is nothing more than Jack's stepchild with no right to inherit my estate. Needless to say, for Patrick, being the CEO, Jacob is nothing more than a step-nephew, if even that. Recovering from the shock, I immediately consulted with Patrick, Noah, and Helen. Following their advice, I took steps at the City Hall to ensure no unauthorized adoption could take place. Additionally, in case of any eventuality, I arranged to entrust the management of my personal assets to a lawyer, a process that was nearly completed when Jack passed away. Jack's own estate, having been mostly spent on his first wife's illness, consisted of little more than savings and life insurance. I quickly renounced my inheritance. The reason the condominium wasn't discussed during the inheritance talks is because it was never part of the estate to begin with. It's frightening how greed can blind people. Jacob and Olivia, thinking the condominium was Jack's, probably rushed to kick me out after I renounced the inheritance. I backed down quietly, not just because I wasn't in the best of health, but also because I pitied young Eric and didn't want to disrupt his living situation drastically. But this time, I've reached my limit. I originally intended to file for an eviction due to illegal occupancy of the condominium during the milestone celebration, so I promptly began the process with my lawyer. Olivia's parents dragged her to the company to apologize. We were told by Olivia that we shouldn't visit because she needed to get along with the family of the person she married, that the birth and everything would be managed by Jacob's family since an heir is being born, and we took her word for it. We had no idea things had come to this. We're truly sorry. No sooner had they been let into the living room than they apologized over and over, but it was too late for regrets. Hearing the commotion, Jacob also came running. "I had no idea my wife could be this unreasonable. I truly am sorry for what I've done to Mom," he said. But when Olivia started crying, he said to her, "We're getting a divorce. Take the kid and get out of that condominium." The look he gave me, almost growling, truly sent shivers down my spine. Seeing my reaction, Patrick looked at Jacob with a cold gaze and said, "You know that store is part of our company's chain, right? Considering the fuss you've made, you'll both be paying for the damages. As for you, stay home until you receive an official summons from the company." He then firmly kicked everyone out of the reception room. Afterward, Patrick began preparations to fire Jacob, consulting the company's legal advisor right after the milestone celebration incident. He was furious, saying, "Not only is Olivia's disgraceful behavior appalling, but Jacob's negligence in letting her run wild is just as bad. They even destroyed store fixtures and decor. Firing him is only natural, right?" Though he was initially adamant about firing him immediately, the other executives calmed him down, explaining that a disciplinary dismissal made in anger could disadvantage us in a lawsuit. So we turned to a law firm known for its capable lawyers. True to their reputation, they did an excellent job providing indisputable evidence that was more than sufficient to fire Jacob. 2 weeks later, Jacob, temporarily relieved from house arrest, was summoned to the head office meeting room, seemingly prepared for his dismissal. Perhaps he had gathered some inside information. Despite arriving with a lawyer, the sheer number of attendees overwhelmed him. As Patrick, sitting at the center of the board, began, "It goes without saying why we've called you here today. Your dismissal has been decided." Jacob braced himself, clenching his fists. "Mr. Jacob Miller, you are hereby dismissed." Patrick, acting as president, began reading the notice of dismissal to Jacob. His lawyer immediately objected. "My client admits to the troubles with his stepmother Kelly, but insists that connecting this to his dismissal is wrongful termination." A voice rose. Glancing at Jacob beside him, he seemed quite pleased, nodding in agreement. "There's no excuse for my ex-wife's rudeness at the recent milestone celebration, but that was a private matter. Isn't it wrong to fire me over it?" he argued. Then, conspicuously placing a voice recorder on the desk, he said, "I'm also prepared to report this as harassment to the media, if necessary," with a smug face. Hearing this, Patrick and the other executives remained silent. Jacob mistook their silence for victory. "You're aware of the public backlash against companies that violate compliance, right? Are you sure you want to fire me knowing what will happen?" he provoked further. At this point, Jacob's lawyer, not showing the expected signs of disturbance, but rather a hint of a smirk, seemed puzzled. Yet Jacob, ever so confident, failed to notice. Patrick then asked in a deeper voice than usual, "Oh, so you wish to continue working with us? That's a hard pass. However, if you wish for me to leave the company amicably, a certain amount of money as a settlement would be necessary," Jacob said, leaning forward on the desk with a smirk as if to challenge the surrounding executives. But in the next moment, laughter erupted spontaneously from everyone present. Some were even laughing so hard that tears formed at the corners of their eyes. Taken aback by their reaction, Jacob quickly turned red and began cursing foully. His lawyer frantically tried to calm him down. The dismissal notice naturally includes the reasons for dismissal. I'll explain them now, and if you have any objections, we can discuss them afterward," Patrick declared, his presence overpowering Jacob and his lawyer into silence. Both sat down. Then a group in dark suits stepped forward, bowed slightly, and turned on the electronic blackboard in the center of the meeting room. Immediately, the screen displayed screenshots of pages where wine exclusively imported for group participating restaurants was being sold on an online marketplace. Next, the screen showed an enlarged photo of the wine cellar's icon. The moment it was displayed, Jacob stood up quickly. "This isn't me," he exclaimed in desperation, turning pale, and for good reason. The photo used for the icon was a cropped selfie of Jacob. The screen neatly displayed the original photos alongside an image match rate of 101% written in red. Facing the lawyer, still unable to grasp the situation, a man from the group of dark suits stepped forward, introducing himself as part of the law firm hired by the company. "Let me explain the reasons for the dismissal notice. The reasons include embezzlement, harassment, undue pressure within the workplace using his executive position, leaking confidential company information, unauthorized absences, tardiness, loafing, and damaging the company's reputation through inappropriate use of a company car," he explained smoothly. He further added that the company's legal and accounting departments had been secretly investigating rumors of the wine, supposed to be sold exclusively in stores, being traded online. In the process, they identified the source account and, collaborating with the police and other relevant parties, discovered that the account was linked to Jacob's online banking account. Additionally, the inventory management department uncovered the existence of double books. Upon questioning, several employees confessed that they had been coerced into participating in the illegal activities by Jacob, who implied they would be fired if they did not comply. As this explanation unfolded, Jacob was sweating profusely, but his complexion turned even paler at the next images displayed. It was a video, seemingly taken secretly with a mobile phone, capturing Jacob as he subjected female interns and temporary staff to sexual harassment and unbearable words. Jacob's lawyer, standing by, couldn't take his eyes off the repeating video, mouth agape. Next shown were images of customer information meant for our company being sold to a rival company, and a USB drive containing original recipes alongside an envelope bearing the name of the rival company's legal counsel. Seeing this, Jacob's face turned from pale to ashen, and his hands trembled on the desk. Our lawyer continued without hesitation, explaining why the USB was transferred from the rival company. Actually, suspicions about the source of this confidential information had arisen even before it was utilized. Upon rechecking the acquisition method, it was found that an employee of the rival company had obtained it from Mr. Jacob Miller in exchange for a significant amount of cash, he explained. The rival company quickly dealt with the involved employee and returned the data to us, along with documents clarifying the factual situation. Jacob's lawyer, taken aback by the continuous revelation of Jacob's misdeeds, listened in stunned silence. However, our lawyer concluded with, "While it might seem superfluous to mention now, all these illegal activities have already led to the filing of criminal complaints. Perhaps instead of discussing settlement money, you should be preparing for a criminal defense," he said with a chilling laugh. Jacob's lawyer turned red-faced. "I've heard nothing of this from my client. I cannot represent him under these circumstances. I resign," he exclaimed, glaring at Jacob before storming out of the room. Left alone, Jacob's initial bravado disappeared, and he slumped in his chair. Before he knew it, the women he had harassed in the video lined up in front of him. "We will be filing for damages as well," they firmly declared. Adding insult to injury, our lawyer continued, "Moreover, it has been confirmed through social media posts that you've been unfaithful with multiple women using company resources, even during work hours, and engaged in inappropriate actions in public. The company will, of course, include these actions in its claims for damages. So please be prepared for that," he stated, speaking pleasantly but with no smile in his eyes. Jacob finally collapsed from his chair, sitting on the floor in defeat. As Patrick and the lawyer had declared, Jacob was swiftly dismissed for misconduct. In the investigation that followed, Jacob, who was interrogated for embezzlement, tried to negotiate a settlement to avoid a prison sentence. However, finding a willing lawyer proved difficult, and he struggled to even pay the retainer fees. Eventually, he managed to cover the lawyer fees and compensation payments using the inheritance from his father, avoiding jail time for embezzlement. Yet, unable to prepare for the compensation claims for leaking confidential information, the emotional damages claimed by the women, and the defamation lawsuits, Jacob found himself buried in debt. Olivia, understandably furious at being quickly discarded by Jacob for his own protection, filed for asset division, damages, and child support. In a defiant stance, Jacob demanded, "Then let's have a DNA test for the child," prioritizing the investigation of paternity over financial concerns. Confidently agreeing, Olivia was shocked when the results showed the child wasn't Jacob's biological offspring. Investigations by a detective hired by Jacob revealed Olivia had multiple partners at the time of their shotgun marriage, one of whom was the biological father, disproving any parental relationship between Jacob and the child. However, legally, Eric was still considered Jacob's child. Knowing he couldn't escape from the obligation of child support, Jacob initiated mediation to confirm the absence of a parental relationship. While a lengthy resolution was expected, the public exposure of Olivia's turbulent private life in court was something her parents wanted to avoid at all costs, leading to an explosive reaction. "Stop bringing shame upon us. Enough with your antics," they demanded, forcing Olivia to withdraw all claims for asset division, damages, and child support. Then Olivia, for reasons known only to her, demanded of Zachary, "You're the father of this child, so you should acknowledge paternity and pay child support." The biological father of her child, Zachary, who was married, refused to acknowledge his responsibility. Zachary was afraid his wife would find out, so he offered to pay some child support. But Olivia was not satisfied. She took the child and confronted Zachary at his home while he was away. "Don't you think it's terrible that your child and mine, sharing the same father, aren't acknowledged and don't receive proper child support?" she boldly stated. Zachary's wife, caught off guard by this revelation and already dissatisfied with her husband, promptly divorced him. She transferred all desirable assets, including a new house, savings, and stocks, into her name before kicking Zachary out with nothing. Initially, Olivia smirked at Zachary's divorce, thinking she could be the next wife. But upon learning he had lost all his assets and was ousted from his father-in-law's company, becoming unemployed, she quickly withdrew. Despite the cause being his own infidelity, Zachary felt his happiness had been destroyed and blamed Olivia. "All of this is her fault," he said. Ever since then, he has been relentlessly pursuing Olivia wherever she hides. Terrified by his obsession, Olivia's parents, to avoid collateral damage, took in only their grandson Eric and disowned Olivia, kicking her out of their home. Left with nowhere to go and no one to turn to, Olivia resorted to night work to support Zachary, now a drunk and unemployed, as I was informed by a detective I had hired for a follow-up investigation. Meanwhile, Jacob, after all the trials had concluded, was left with a mountain of debt and alimony payments. A claim for me for the restoration costs of the condominium seemed to be the final blow. Trying to make a comeback proved futile as he couldn't find stable employment and resorted to juggling short-term jobs, inevitably falling behind on repayments. There was a time when he possibly couldn't afford a mobile phone and called from a public phone, pleading, "Please, I need help," but the call ended in silence after I remained quiet. Rumors suggest he was last seen being taken to a work site by barely legal debt collectors, but his whereabouts since then remain unknown. As for myself, taking this experience into account, I've become more actively involved in work. I used to think of myself as a decorative executive, a burden to my family, contributing nothing. However, during this ordeal, the company's female employees encouraged me. Even with accessible stores, its true usability can't be known without directly asking the users. "Kelly, you could surely bridge that gap. Have more confidence in yourself." getting more involved in on-site work made me realize I had become a pro at finding reasons for why I can't do this or that's impossible. Regretting not realizing this sooner, I'm now 51 with 9 years left until retirement. Rather than mourning the irretrievable past, I'm determined to make the most of these next 9 years. My current goal is to earn an extension of my retirement from Patrick and our relatives, and to report this achievement to Jack, who has passed away. Thanks for quitting. Olivia sneered and looked at me. I just silently stared back at her. It's about cutting labor costs. We don't need someone who exploits overtime pay at our company. Jerry seemed pleased too. A week later, I kept getting calls from the company. Hello, I answered. The president spoke. Who exactly are you? I laughed mockingly at his words. I am Nicole Wallace. I'm 57 years old. I've been working at this company for 35 years since graduating from college. Our company is staffed with administrative scriveners, social insurance labor consultants, and tax accountants handling clerical work for our clients. This is especially popular with company presidents who run their businesses alone. These presidents are busy with sales and lack the time for clerical work, so our company takes care of it for them. I belong to the tax department. I got my bookkeeping and tax accountant qualifications during my school days, and that's why I joined this company. Now I'm managing 41 clients, which keeps me quite busy. Even though a part-timer handles the accounting entries, it's still overwhelming. But I can't show any weakness. Our clients are all long-term relationships, and many of them have had their fair share of hardships. Seeing them face adversity, I feel I can't lose either. So here I am in front of my computer again today. Lately, I've been troubled. Jerry and Olivia have been harassing me. Jerry, 6 years younger than me, is the head of the tax department. He used to be just a regular colleague, but his attitude changed drastically 5 months ago when he got promoted. He used to speak politely, but suddenly he started talking down to me. Nicole, what are you doing? You've got some nerve slacking off during work hours. He's always either sarcastic or complaining. I'm looking at documents for tax-saving strategies for our clients. When I talked back, Jerry stayed calm. Just check the manual for that. Don't do anything unnecessary, and if you end up working overtime, don't expect to get paid for it, he said, glaring at me. Unable to respond, I heard Olivia, Jerry's assistant, say, Nicole, you should work more efficiently. At this rate, you'll never finish. That's why you're still a regular employee. Olivia laughed mockingly. I was the first to be offered the promotion to department head, but I declined. Becoming the head meant more time for management and less for client interaction. It was an internal offer, so Jerry and Olivia didn't know about it. I'll make sure to complete my regular duties as well, I managed to say. Still, Jerry and Olivia's harassment continued. You're increasing overtime again. What a waste of overtime, Jerry's angry voice echoed today. Nicole, cut it out. Your constant overtime is dragging down the whole tax department's performance, Olivia sighed. The reason for yesterday's overtime was simple. Jerry had accumulated a month's worth of declaration forms to be filed by the end of the month. After work yesterday, Jerry suddenly said, "Take care of these," and left several client files on my desk. I turned pale when I saw the files. Wait, these all have deadlines this month, right? I asked in confusion, but Jerry was already packing up at his desk. I'm heading out. Take care, he said, and quickly left the office. Good luck, okay? Olivia followed Jerry out, laughing mockingly. Unbelievable. I sighed and opened the client files left on my desk. Some of the files were Olivia's responsibility. I sighed even deeper. I knew why Jerry was harassing me. They wanted me to retire quickly. I have more experience and deeper knowledge in taxation than him. So other members of the tax department come to me with their questions instead of Jerry. There are other reasons why everyone avoids Jerry. He looks greasy and unapproachable. The only female employee who stays near him is Olivia. Jerry likes young women. That's probably why he wants me to retire, so the other female employees will rely on him more. It's such shallow thinking. It gives me chills. There's also the fact that he simply doesn't like me. Olivia was harassing me to curry favor with Jerry. Jerry evaluates the performance of the tax department, so she probably wanted to undermine me to get a good evaluation from him. Anyway, I have to manage these declarations. I have to prepare the tax declarations for my assigned companies, but it looks like I won't finish today's work either. If I try to claim overtime, I'll just get complaints from Jerry and Olivia. So I resigned myself to unpaid overtime. Then, one day, I was suddenly called to the president's office. Our company had just had a change of president. The original president's father had been managing the company since it was founded, and he had recently handed it over to his son. The son had always worked at another company and wasn't fully familiar with ours, but he had to take over because his father had suddenly fallen ill. "Excuse me," I said as I entered the president's office. I noticed Jerry and Olivia there, both with unpleasant smirks on their faces. "Why are Jerry and the others here?" I muttered quietly so no one else could hear. In this tense and strange atmosphere, the president spoke. "Nicole, we'll need you to resign by the end of this month." "Excuse me? What do you mean?" I asked, my mind spinning. "I heard from Jerry and Olivia that you've been overbilling for overtime. Other members of the tax department have only about 16 hours of overtime per month, but Nicole, you're already over 83 hours. Don't you find that odd? Jerry and Olivia have 0 overtime this month. Impressive, right?" The president looked at me sternly. The reason my overtime was so high this month was that I was doing Jerry and Olivia's work. But if I said it was Jerry's instructions, it would seem like my own inability to manage time. So I just stated the facts. I haven't overbilled for overtime. It's because I couldn't finish my work within regular hours. The president sighed deeply. "I'm doubtful, but there's no evidence, so I won't pursue it further. However, we can't continue to employ someone who works that slowly, so I want you to resign." The president's mind seemed made up. Me being told to leave the company I had dedicated my entire 35-year career to. I was tired too. No matter how much more I did beyond my own work, it was never appreciated. Instead, I ended up having to take on Jerry and Olivia's work as well. "Yes, I understand. I'll resign at the end of this month." I realized I had already said that to the president. I glanced at Jerry and Olivia. They were smiling smugly, looking very pleased. After leaving the president's office with them, Olivia looked at me and said, "Thanks for quitting." Olivia sneered at me. I just silently stared back at her. Jerry also looked down on me the same way. "We're cutting labor costs. We don't need someone who exploits overtime pay at our company." Jerry seemed pleased too. While watching the two of them talk so cheerily, I thought about the handover process and started creating the handover documents for all my clients. Of course, I didn't miss saying goodbye to the people I was handing over to. I tried to get an appointment with the president to say goodbye in person. For the presidents I couldn't meet, I sent letters and informed them of my successor. A week after I resigned, I was relaxing at home. I had been busy with the handover until my resignation and had been extremely busy even before that. A little relaxation shouldn't be a problem. As I was thinking this, my mobile phone rang. When I checked the call, it was from the company. What could they want now? I made sure to take care of the social insurance procedures. I didn't answer the phone, but then the company called several more times. In fact, I had also received several calls from Jerry and Olivia's personal mobile phones. Maybe they thought I'd answer if it was from the company. Reluctantly, I decided to answer. "Hello? Nicole, it's a mess right now," the president said as soon as I answered. "Who exactly are you?" I laughed mockingly at his words. "Who am I? Just an unemployed lady. I've resigned from the company and I'm nothing else, right?" Then the president spoke urgently. "Since you left, we've had 55 calls to stop transactions with the company. Please come back immediately." The president said his piece and hung up. He must be really panicked. I guess I have no choice. I got up reluctantly and headed to the company. As soon as I arrived, Jerry and Olivia were waiting. Both of their faces were pale, and they had dark circles under their eyes. "What's wrong with both of you?" I asked, surprised at their drastic change in appearance. Jerry glared at me and said, "Since you left, we've been getting calls one after another to stop transactions. Not just from your clients, but from prospective companies we were planning to introduce. What did you do?" Olivia also looked at me with suspicion. I never thought Nicole would do something so underhanded. I'm truly disillusioned. The reason they both looked so haggard was probably due to dealing with the cancellations. I hadn't done anything to the clients, but I had a guess why they were canceling their transactions. "Well, the cancellations might be unavoidable this time," I muttered. Jerry yelled, "So you did do something, didn't you? Get to the president's office now." He then took me to the president's office. "President, I brought her," Jerry declared forcefully as he opened the door. Olivia followed in a hurry. "Oh, I've been waiting," the president said, looking me in the eyes. Jerry accused me like I was the culprit. "It appears that Nicole was involved in the cessation of transactions with our clients. We should not only make her resign, but also sue her for damages," Olivia argued vehemently, though her language was careful in front of the president. The president ignored them and asked, "Why did so many companies stop transactions after you left?" I took a deep breath and answered clearly, "Don't you understand? Our clients don't need us to manage their taxes. There are tax accountant firms that do it cheaper. Yet they continued with us because I was here." Jerry snapped at me. "What's with that attitude towards the president? And you think you're worth that much?" Olivia taunted, "There's no way it has to be Nicole." The president looked serious. "Jerry and Olivia work based on the manual, optimizing operations, but I do more than that. I offer tax-saving strategies tailored to our clients' situations. Uniform responses don't always serve the client's best interests. Many clients preferred my approach and stayed because of it." Jerry got angry. "How can we afford to give such detailed attention to each case? It takes too much time." "That's right, it's inefficient," Olivia strongly agreed. The president sighed deeply and said, "Actually, I just got a call from Dad, the former president. Some of the clients who stopped transactions had gone directly to him to negotiate about Nicole." I was surprised to hear this. I hadn't expected the clients to go that far for me. Dad said that the tax department was viable because of Nicole. She not only managed her clients, but also supported her colleagues' clients, and she has knowledge that Jerry can't match. Dad also said that if Nicole hadn't declined, she would have been in a higher position than a department head by now. The president spoke with a pained expression. "No, no way." Olivia looked shocked. She probably couldn't believe I might have been her boss. The president continued, "I'm really sorry for making you resign, but can we cancel your resignation, Nicole? You're needed at our company. My father also strongly said so." I was honestly happy about the president's changed opinion, but I couldn't accept it. Then Jerry interrupted, "President, what do you mean she's better than me? I can't accept this." Jerry was visibly upset. Olivia also protested. "Jerry is a wonderful boss who cares for his subordinates, and yet you choose Nicole over him. That's unacceptable." The president looked sternly at them. "Actually, since Nicole resigned, we've been receiving numerous complaints from the tax department. You two seem to have been pushing your work onto others, haven't you?" "What? Why would you say that?" Jerry's face turned pale. The president started speaking with a look of disgust. "I've heard from the employees. Jerry, you've been pushing the preparation of your clients' declaration forms onto your subordinates, haven't you? Including Olivia's work for many clients." Next to Jerry, who was getting paler, Olivia trembled when her name was mentioned. There was a leak saying you've been pushing your work onto Nicole until she resigned. Jerry, you were calling her a salary thief. It seems the roles are reversed, aren't they? The president spoke with a sigh. No, that's not true. Jerry was visibly flustered, unable to come up with an excuse. Observing Jerry and Olivia turning pale together, the president continued, Also, there was a leak that you two are in a relationship. You were often seen leaving work together, but Jerry, you're married, aren't you? The president glared at Jerry and Olivia. I was just mentoring Olivia as her superior. Nothing inappropriate. Jerry struggled to find the words when the president produced several receipts. These are receipts queried by the accounting department. These dining expenses filed by Jerry. Who were they with? Certainly not with clients, right? Jerry was sweating profusely, unable to speak. Olivia's face turned ghostly pale. Jerry and Olivia, you've neglected your duty and inflated expense claims. Plus, you're having an affair in the office despite being married. According to company policy, I'm terminating your employment as of today, the president told them calmly and straightforwardly. Jerry and Olivia tried to resist. Please wait. I'll retract the receipt claims. Just don't fire me. I have a family. Jerry desperately tried to reverse his firing. Olivia did the same. Please, I don't want to be fired. I'll apologize to Nicole and the others for dumping work on them. Olivia was on the verge of tears, realizing the severity of being fired for neglecting work and having an affair with a supervisor. She must have been worried about her reputation. I advised Jerry and Olivia, why don't you just stop resisting? It's undignified. Jerry glared at me. Shut up. What would a single person like you understand? I sighed and said, Jerry, you were the one who got me fired. It's just karma. What goes around comes around. Why don't you take some responsibility and reflect a bit? Damn it, Jerry looked frustrated. Olivia bit her lip. I haven't reported this yet, but there's more to Jerry and Olivia's misconduct. Should I share more details? I asked the president with a smile. Jerry and Olivia's behavior was well known in the tax department. Their stories had reached me whether I liked it or not. No, please don't, Nicole. Stop. Both were frantically trying to stop me. I gave them an ultimatum. Wrongdoings eventually come to light. It would be better for you to face reality before it gets worse. At my words, both of them collapsed to their knees. Ultimately, Jerry and Olivia were fired on the spot. I revealed their misdeeds afterward. These included Jerry faking business trips to go out with Olivia for days and harassing employees they disliked into quitting. They repeatedly reprimanded and pressured employees out of my sight and suddenly assigned work with tight deadlines. The employees who resigned asked me to keep quiet, but now they are happily working at other companies, so I decided it was okay to speak up. The president was furious at my revelation. He expressed his anger about cutting their final salary and also planned to thoroughly investigate past inflated expense claims. Jerry was begging the president, tears in his eyes, Please don't cut my salary. What will I tell my family if they find out? Eventually, Jerry and Olivia's affair was exposed to Jerry's wife, and Jerry ended up getting divorced. The two are now facing claims for compensation in the divorce lawsuit. I know this because, for some reason, Jerry contacted me. Please, can you persuade the president to reconsider the firing? Olivia and I are in a real bind now. Apparently, Jerry and Olivia are struggling to find new jobs. The tax industry is somewhat insular. If you commit too many misdeeds, word spreads quickly through the industry's network. That's why no one is willing to hire Jerry and Olivia. They need money for the divorce compensation and living expenses, so now they're working day labor at construction sites. People used to office work suddenly doing hard labor outdoors must be tough. Olivia often calls me crying, Nicole, please help. I just wanted a raise and a better life. I never really liked Jerry, and this situation is unbearable, Olivia would say, crying. However, Jerry and Olivia's predicament is their own doing. Many people, including myself, have been victims of their actions. So I told Olivia, "This is all your own fault, Olivia. You can't undo what's been done. It will be hard to return to the same path. You're just going to have to deal with the hardships." "No way," Olivia cried out in despair. This was the outcome of Olivia's actions. I hope she continues to regret her actions in the future. As for me, I'm still enjoying a relaxed lifestyle away from work. The president has been begging me to return, but I have declined. After being told to resign once, I don't think I'll go back. Sometimes I help out at a friend's tax office to earn a bit of money. Maybe once things settle down, I'll start my own office like my friend. In my own office, no one can complain about my working style. I can fully dedicate myself to my clients. As a tax accountant, I want to be on equal footing with my clients, not as a teacher, but as part of the service industry. My second life has just begun. I'm looking forward to delving into what I want to do next. Olivia's tears and pleas for help continued to come. "Nicole, please help. I just wanted a better life," she would cry. But her words didn't move me. The memory of the stress and harassment I endured because of her and Jerry was still fresh in my mind. "Olivia, you made your bed, and now you have to lie in it," I would tell her. "You can't expect sympathy when you showed none to others." "But it's so hard," Olivia would sob. "I never imagined it would turn out like this." "Actions have consequences," I replied. "You and Jerry brought this on yourselves. You can't go back and undo it. Now you have to face the results of what you've done." Olivia's cries of despair were the echoes of her own choices. It was a harsh lesson, but one she needed to learn. As for me, I found peace in my new routine. Helping out at my friend's tax office was rewarding. I enjoyed the work without the toxic atmosphere Jerry and Olivia had created. The president's requests for me to return became more frequent. "Please come back, Nicole. We need you," he would say. "I'm sorry, but I can't return," I would reply each time. "I appreciate the offer, but I've moved on." Starting my own office became a clearer goal each day. In my own space, I would set the rules. No more dealing with unfair treatment or office politics. I would focus on providing the best service to my clients, building relationships based on trust and respect. In this new chapter of my life, I could finally breathe. I felt lighter, free from the burdens of the past. My days were filled with purpose, and my nights were peaceful, free from the anxiety that had once plagued me. Looking forward, I saw endless possibilities. I could expand my skills, take on new challenges, and build something of my own. My second life was just beginning, and I was excited about the future. No longer weighed down by the negativity of my old job, I could now fully embrace the opportunities ahead. As I planned my new business, I remembered the support and trust my clients had shown me. They were the reason I continued in this field. Their belief in my abilities was the foundation of my new venture. With them in mind, I knew I would succeed. My journey had been tough, but it had made me stronger. Now I was ready to turn the page and start a new chapter. With renewed energy and a clear vision, I looked forward to what was to come. My past experiences had taught me valuable lessons, and I was eager to apply them in my new role. In the end, Olivia and Jerry's downfall served as a reminder of the importance of integrity and respect in the workplace. Their story was a cautionary tale, one that reinforced my commitment to building a positive and supportive environment in my own office. As I moved forward, I carried with me the knowledge that I could overcome any obstacle. My resilience and determination had brought me this far, and they would continue to guide me in the future. My second life was not just a continuation of the old, but a new beginning, full of promise and potential. I'm looking forward to having a blast on a getaway with my friends, all thanks to your credit card. Suddenly, James called me. Lately, he's been returning home late, sneaking conversations on the phone with Sandra, and acting nervous around our place. It made me wonder if he had been planning something secretive all this time. I had my suspicions that James and Sandra were up to something together. Fortunately, I was ready for whatever they had planned. Maybe I should act shocked about it. "What do you mean by yours?" I asked, needing an explanation. I was already aware that James had plans to leave for a trip today. To be honest, I find it astonishing. If he thinks he can deceive me, I wish he had thought his plan through more carefully. I've been patient with everything up until now. However, today, I can't help but feel the need to seek revenge. I've always had a plan for revenge up my sleeve. It's high time we stand up to James and his sister after all the patience we've shown. I believe that by the end of today, things will start to make sense. I hope they enjoy their trip, not knowing that I have someone on the inside working with me. My name is Kelly Brooke, and I'm 36 years old, living in a house with my husband James. I jumped straight into work right after finishing high school. Thanks to some experience and a recommendation from my boss, I've earned several certifications. In my company, these certifications and a solid track record mean a lot. At about 23, I was promoted to a lead position, which was quite an achievement as I was the youngest to ever do so in my company. Even though it's just a leadership role, it's a big deal to me. I always had this quiet goal of climbing up the corporate ladder, aiming to become at least a department head someday. As time went by, the company welcomed some fresh faces, including James. Even though I'm younger than him, I held a higher position at work. My job was to train James along with 3 other newcomers, making it 3 trainees in total. "Hey Kelly, we're about the same age, aren't we? And you're already a supervisor? That's amazing," James remarked, showing his surprise. "Yeah, I might be a year or so younger. I've been working here since I decided to leave high school early. It's given me a lot of experience," I explained. James seemed impressed by my early career focus. He would often praise me during those days. Eventually, James began to show interest in me, and although I was hesitant at first, I found myself falling for him over time. Our relationship followed a familiar path, going out for meals, taking drives together, and eventually, we decided to move in together. Living with James, I started noticing his less meticulous habits. I thought it might be his way of showing trust, being his authentic self with me, so I tried not to let it bother me too much. After some time, James proposed, and I accepted. We then sat down to talk about our future together. "I'd love for you to be a stay-at-home wife," James suggested. "I'll work and make money, and you can look after the house. It's the ideal setup. I also want us to start a family soon, buy our own home, and plan our wedding. I'm thinking wedding first, then buying a home, followed by kids. What's your take, Kelly?" "James, your plan sounds lovely," I responded. "The sequence doesn't really matter to me, but we do need to think about our financial situation, especially with our savings. And I'm not planning to quit my job, even if we have kids. We could arrange our work schedules to be more flexible. I'm just worried about how we'll manage financially if we decide to buy a house." "Yeah, I understand that," James admitted, "but it bothers me that you earn more than me. Still, I dream about us having our own place. I was hoping we could buy a house right after we get married." "That might be difficult," I pointed out, hinting at the challenges ahead. "Since I already make more money than you, James, let's focus on managing our wedding and getting a house for now. We can think about having kids later and figure out what to do regarding my job at that point." "All right, let's go with that plan," James agreed. Deep down, I really didn't want to leave my job, but I proposed this idea to keep things balanced. Otherwise, I feared James might keep pushing his expectations on me indefinitely. During our engagement, we threw a party that both our families attended. James's sister, Sandra, was away traveling, so our wedding was the first time I met her. She barged into the bride and groom's prep room without knocking, sized me up with a smirk, and remarked, "So this is James's choice?" A bit on the simple side compared to his exes, huh? Oh, I'm Sandra, your new sister-in-law. Just so you know, I'm pretty straightforward with family. I'm Kelly. Nice to meet you, I replied, somewhat taken aback by her bold demeanor. Sandra waved dismissively and left the room, leaving me a bit shocked by her blunt introduction. Yes, this new sister-in-law of mine was certainly a character. Later on, I met Sandra's husband, who seemed like a reasonable person in contrast. Our wedding ceremony was beautiful and went smoothly. James and I eventually purchased the house we both loved, and life seemed to be moving at a busy pace, prompting me to invest even more energy into my work. One day, when I was busy, the doorbell rang. I asked James to answer it. He returned, all smiles and laughter, with Sandra, who had decided to drop by unexpectedly. Kelly, hey, look at James, owning such a big house. That's pretty good for him, right? After all, he's my little brother, Sandra commented, making herself comfortable. I've been working hard. Feel free to make yourself at home. Kelly, do we have any snacks or something? My sister's here, so let's be quick. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off with James's behavior. He seemed to puff himself up in his sister's presence, acting as if he was the sole owner of our house. It was clear he probably led her to believe he bought the house on his own. I played a significant role in making the down payment and continue to contribute to the mortgage payments for our house. Despite this, James was adamant about having the title in his name alone, and eventually, I agreed to it. Living together made me think it wouldn't really matter whose name was on the deed. However, the way James bragged about it to his sister rubbed me the wrong way. Still, I chose to keep quiet and not cause a fuss. Here are some snacks. James does put in a lot of effort, you know, I mentioned casually, trying to smooth over the atmosphere. Why does Kelly sound so in charge? She's not the boss or anything, Sandra remarked, a hint of annoyance in her voice. Well, actually, I am James's supervisor at work, I clarified, a bit surprised. Oh, is that so? Did James not tell you? When I joined the company, Kelly was already a manager. Since she started working right after leaving high school, it just happened that way. If it were up to me, I'd have surpassed her quickly, Sandra mused. Wait, you left high school early? You seem so responsible, yet you're less accomplished than me, Sandra asked, a bit mockingly. Is there an issue just because I didn't finish high school? I responded, trying to keep the peace. No, not really. But Kelly, since you're not a high school graduate and I'm your sister-in-law, I can ask you for anything, right? That's the rule, Sandra joked, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely kidding. Kelly, whatever my sister wants, she gets. If you refuse, I'll have to ask you to leave the house, James added, seemingly backing up his sister's outrageous claim. I was baffled by their conversation. Why would not having a high school diploma and her being my sister-in-law mean she could demand anything from me? And the threat of being kicked out of my own home for not complying. Was this some sort of bizarre joke? I managed a polite smile and quickly retreated to the kitchen, needing a moment to collect my thoughts. From there, I could still hear James and his sister talking, and it sounded like they were serious about what they had said. A little while later, Sandra followed me into the kitchen. Hey, Kelly, I actually need to ask you for a favor. What is it? I asked, already dreading the request. I need to borrow some money, like $5,000, please, she said, as if it were a small favor. How is that a small amount? That's quite a lot. What do you even need it for? I questioned, trying to grasp the situation. Come on, it's just $5,000. You're a supervisor, right? You must have a good salary, Sandra pressed, assuming my financial situation would easily cover her request. The entire conversation felt surreal, leaving me to wonder how we'd gotten to this point. Sandra needed the money to cover the costs of renovations. When I reminded her about boasting of her new condo recently, she brushed it off. Huh, did I? Well, just give me the money. James said he'd lend it to me and told me to ask you. What? Why would he make such a decision without consulting me first? I was taken aback by James's assumption. Listen, Kelly, you either give me the money, or I'll call your boss right now and tell them you're resigning. Which will it be? Sandra put me in a tight spot. All right, Sandra, I'll lend you the money, but there's a condition, I asserted. We need to draft a promissory note. What? Even though we're family? Sandra seemed surprised. Yes, I want it in writing. So when you come to collect the money, bring a valid ID with a photo, okay? Ew, such a hassle. But fine, if you're giving me the money, I'll come over tomorrow night. Sandra reluctantly agreed. Despite the inconvenience, I knew it was crucial to get Sandra's agreement in writing. True to her word, albeit grumbling, she brought everything required the next day. Through this ordeal, I realized just how much James was under his sister's influence. It was frankly absurd. No matter what I said, it wouldn't have made any difference, it seemed. Later, I discovered Sandra spent the money on designer items, and after the initial loan, she started asking for more money without any shame. I insisted on a promissory note each time, and within a month, she had borrowed around $12,000 from me. Just when the situation seemed unbearable, I received an unexpected call from my boss. They wanted to promote me from a supervisor to a department manager. I was ecstatic. This was a step closer to my dream of becoming the head manager. Eager to share the great news, I rushed home to James, who had taken the day off. I'm home. James, guess what? I announced my arrival. Welcome back, Kelly. You seem thrilled. What's up? James greeted me. Today, my boss called me in, and guess what? He offered me the position of department manager. I've always aimed to be the head manager, so I'm incredibly excited to be moving closer to my goal. Oh, wait, what? Kelly, you're getting promoted. James's reaction mixed surprise with perhaps a hint of disbelief, underlining a day full of revelations and reaffirming my commitment to my career goals amidst the family drama. I don't understand. Did you actually say yes to the promotion? James asked, clearly puzzled. Yes, I accepted it. I've mentioned my career goals to you before, haven't I? I responded, surprised by his reaction. Wait a minute. You should have asked for my permission before making such a decision. What were you thinking? Plus, I've always said I wanted you to be a stay-at-home wife. How is it that you're moving up while I'm stuck in the same spot? Doesn't that strike you as odd? James questioned, frustration evident in his tone. That's not my responsibility. I've made it clear I don't want to quit working. Why you haven't been promoted is something I can't answer, I replied, standing my ground. Soon after our exchange, James made a call, presumably to his sister, because she showed up a few minutes later. Hey, I've heard you snatched the promotion that should have been James's. What gives? She accused me right away. I didn't snatch anything. In our company, promotions are awarded based on one's performance, I explained calmly. So what, you're suggesting James isn't good at his job? How could you look down on your own husband? Sandra snapped back, twisting my words. This is absurd, I muttered under my breath as they decided to celebrate at my expense, grabbing my bank card right from my purse. Despite my attempts to resist, they overpowered me, leaving the house with laughter as their parting shot. Tears filled my eyes as I realized the magnitude of my mistake in marrying James. Regret flooded in, but it was clear what I needed to do next: find a reputable divorce lawyer. James didn't return home that night. The following day at work, he approached me with a smug expression. Yesterday was so fun. Nothing beats a feast paid for by someone else. Thanks for covering it. He handed me the receipt from a high-end barbecue place, showing a charge of $1,500, along with receipts from luxury bars amounting to a staggering $9,000. I was fuming inside but bit my tongue as more colleagues arrived. On my way home, I checked my bank account and was horrified to discover a total of $9,000 had been withdrawn. I confronted James as soon as I saw him. James, what on earth were you thinking? Spending $9,000? On fancy meals and bars, no less? That money was mine, saved from before we were together, I exclaimed, barely containing my anger over his reckless spending and disregard for our financial well-being. As soon as I walked through the door, James started complaining about me nagging him. When I brought up the issue of the money he had spent, money I had saved before we got married, he dismissively said, "I don't know and I don't care. It's already spent anyway," and locked himself in the bathroom. That was the last straw for me. I decided then and there that I was going to divorce him. Over the weekend, I visited a lawyer, and in the weeks following, the preparations for our divorce moved along smoothly. James's behavior hadn't improved. He continued to come home late and rushed out early on his days off. Just when I was considering hiring a detective to see what he was up to, I received a call from Ryan, my brother-in-law. "Hello, is this Kelly?" Ryan's voice came through the phone. "Yes, Ryan. It's unusual to hear from you. What's up?" I replied, surprised by his call. "Well, it's been a while. I'm actually calling to ask if Sandra is with you," he said. "No, Sandra isn't here. Why do you ask?" I was curious. "She's been coming home late and disappearing on weekends without telling me where she's going. She mentioned she was at James's place when I asked her yesterday," Ryan explained. "That's interesting. James has been acting similarly. They might be going somewhere together, but frankly, it's no longer my concern," I shared, distancing myself from the situation. "Oh, and Ryan, there's something I need to tell you too," I continued, sensing an opportunity to share my experiences. Ryan was taken aback by my indifference, but urged me to continue. I told him everything about the money Sandra had borrowed from me, James's extravagant spending, and my decision to divorce James. Hearing all this, Ryan sighed deeply. "Is that so? I'm sorry about my wife. I've been at my wit's end, thinking about divorce but haven't been able to take that step," he confessed. "Ryan, why don't you use the evidence I've gathered? It sounds like we're both dealing with similar issues. Maybe it's time to teach these reckless siblings a lesson they won't forget," I suggested, feeling a bond of mutual understanding forming between us. "Yeah, let's work on this together," Ryan agreed, a note of determination in his voice. Then he mentioned something intriguing. Sandra had been pushing him to take a long vacation, and he had noticed travel brochures on their vanity. Curious, I decided to investigate a shelf in our house that James always kept off limits. To my astonishment, I found travel brochures and club cards hidden there. It all made sense now. They were planning a trip without us knowing. "Ryan, I think they're definitely planning a trip. I just found evidence of it," I informed him, both of us realizing the depth of our partner's deceit. This newfound information solidified our resolve to proceed with our plans for divorce and hold them accountable for their actions. I stumbled upon some travel brochures hidden away, sparking an idea. As I shared my plan with Ryan over the phone, he couldn't help but laugh and agreed to play along. We concluded our call with a promise to coordinate our actions through text messages. I also forwarded him some evidence that might be useful for his own divorce proceedings while we meticulously strategized our next moves. 3 weeks later, just as the sun was rising, James left our house, a plan I was privy to thanks to a heads-up from Ryan the previous day. A few hours into his adventure, James called me, boasting about how he was going to enjoy a trip using my credit card with Sandra and their friends. His late nights and secretive phone calls had already aroused my suspicion that they were plotting something. Fortunately, I was ready for their games. Feigning surprise, I asked him to clarify. With a smirk in his voice, James revealed that they had been planning this trip for a long time and viewed Ryan as a safety net in case their plan fell through. They thought I was becoming too confident and decided it was time to teach me a lesson, as he put it. James's words were meant to belittle me, suggesting I couldn't stand up to their manipulations. But I was beyond feeling hurt or angry. I felt nothing at all. I questioned James about his earlier comment regarding my debit card, playing along with his illusion of victory. Confused, James insisted he had taken my card, but I calmly informed him that my card was still with me in my wallet. There was a moment of silence before he stuttered, questioning what card he had bragged about using. I revealed, much to his shock, that he had mistakenly taken an old gym membership card of mine. It matched my debit card in color and size. Realization dawned on James as he confirmed it did say Fitness Club on the card, and he began to question his mistake, wondering if he had mixed up the cards. Amidst this confusion, Ryan, who had been listening in on speakerphone, couldn't contain his amusement. James's grand plan to splurge on my dime had crumbled over a simple mix-up with a gym card. This blunder not only foiled their extravagant scheme, but also marked the beginning of their comeuppance, with Ryan and I ready to move forward with our plans, strengthened by the absurdity of their mistake. James was adamant he had seen his debit card, but his plan had fallen apart. "Ah, so this was Sandra and your scheme," he lamented, realizing he had been outsmarted. "I'm so disappointed. Actually, last night, I swapped your debit card with the gym membership card. It seems you didn't bother to check this morning and just took off with it," I revealed, enjoying the turn of events. What? What are you playing at?" James was clearly frustrated. "No, I should be asking you that. Tough break, huh? Don't get too full of yourself just because you're my stepbrother. Got it?" I countered, not letting him intimidate me. James tried to brush it off. "You'll see. We have gifts for you both when we return." "You think you can bribe us? I won't accept anything but cash," he bluffed. "We'll see about that. Look forward to it," I dismissed his comment, focusing on the situation at hand. "What are you going to do now?" "Oh, Kelly, can you send us some money?" James finally asked, his tone changing. I ended the call there. His message following the call, trying to threaten me with involving Ryan, only received a nonchalant "Is that so?" from me before I went back to sleep. When I woke up in the afternoon, my phone was flooded with missed calls and messages. I first called Ryan, then decided to pick up James's call. "Hey, finally. Send the money, please. It's so cold. I think we're going to freeze," James pleaded. The reason for their discomfort was clear. They were in Alaska. In February, the cold there is biting, and if James and his group were complaining, it meant my plan had worked perfectly. "Really? You mentioned Ryan would help, right? Or is he not there?" I played along. "What? Do you know something?" James's confusion was evident. "Should I fill you in? Since you and Sandra decided to team up, Ryan and I did the same. It's quite simple," I explained, enjoying the irony of the situation. "Now, do you understand why I kept you on the phone for so long during that first call? It was to buy time, and Ryan, he's on his way back here on another plane." The revelation seemed to hit James hard. Our coordinated response to their scheme had left them stranded and cold, far from the luxurious getaway they had anticipated. My satisfaction came not just from thwarting their plan, but also from the solidarity Ryan and I showed in facing their deceit. As soon as I received confirmation that Ryan had boarded his flight back, I ended the call with a clear message to James. "We've joined forces to teach you a lesson. Now, find your way back on your own. See you." And with that, I hung up, eager for Ryan's return. I took this time to call my lawyer, setting up what would be our final meeting about the divorce before James and his companions could make their way back. I anticipated a confrontation upon their return and wanted to be fully prepared. Just a few hours later, as predicted, James and his entourage arrived, bursting with indignation. "Kelly, what the hell? You better be ready to move out. Ryan sided with you, hasn't he? Why'd you return before us? This is unbelievable. You think I'm okay with this? Apologize now." "Shut it and sit down," Ryan intervened, his usually calm voice now booming, commanding James and his friend to sit immediately. They complied, shocked into silence by Ryan's authority. Our lawyer wasted no time, distributing his business cards to James and his friend, who looked utterly confused as they accepted them. Without further ado, Ryan and I presented them with a stack of papers. Their confusion turned to shock as they skimmed the documents, their complexions draining of color. "Wait, this talks about dividing property. You're not suggesting a divorce, are you?" James stammered, disbelief coloring his tone. "It's on mine, too. A divorce? What did I even do? This has to be a joke, right?" James's friend echoed his disbelief, looking from one to the other for confirmation. "Yeah, right," Ryan responded, his tone final. "I'm heading home. I've had enough. I've been recording your daily tantrums for a while now, including that call you made during your so-called vacation, James. You really don't see the problem with your behavior, do you? I can't keep living like this." "Wait, are you serious?" James's voice was tinged with a sudden realization of the gravity of the situation as the reality of impending divorces began to sink in. The tables had turned entirely, with Ryan and I standing united, ready to move forward from the chaos they had created. "I mentioned it before, didn't I? I want half of the down payment we made on the house, plus the remainder of the mortgage, and I want back the savings you used from when I was single." I firmly stated my demands to James. Turning to Sandra, I continued, "And you, Sandra, you're going to repay me for the money you borrowed and the additional amounts you withdrew from my savings along with James, right?" Sandra tried to deflect. "Wait, James was the one who bought the house, and I never borrowed or spent any of that money. You're making false accusations." "Sandra, please review the documents. There's a promissory note outlining exactly how much you owe," I pointed out, undeterred. "No way. I don't know anything about this." "Without proof, I'll just dismiss this as useless," she retorted, attempting to downplay the seriousness of the evidence. Both James and Sandra acted rashly in response. James crushed the recorder under his foot, and Sandra ripped the paper to shreds, both wearing smug looks of defiance. "Look here, James, destroying that recorder changes nothing. The data's still saved on my computer. And Sandra, that document you destroyed wasn't the original. You've accomplished nothing," I calmly explained, revealing their efforts to be futile. "What the hell are you three even trying to do?" James's frustration was evident. "Oops," was my simple reply, highlighting their lack of foresight. To Sandra, "I also have a claim against you for all the savings you squandered, not to mention the cozy time you spent with that guy at the bar," I added, revealing more of their misdeeds. Faced with the reality of their actions and the legal repercussions, both James and Sandra started to break down, tears streaming down their faces. The financial reckoning was harsh but fair. For James, the total came to $135,000, $8,000 for emotional damages, $100,000 for the house's down payment, and $15,000 for miscellaneous expenses. Additionally, there was an upcoming loan repayment of $4,000. Sandra's bill amounted to $35,000, which included $11,000 for miscellaneous expenses and $31,000 for the loan she had acknowledged with the promissory note. As for Ryan's claims against Sandra, given her intentional distress and frivolous spending, the total was $135,000, $55,000 for emotional damages, and $80,000 for miscellaneous expenses, all calculated without dividing any assets like condos. This stark financial and emotional toll underscored the consequences of their actions, serving as a potent reminder of accountability and the importance of integrity in relationships. After the fallout, I half expected James and Sandra to attempt suing us, given their track record. However, our sharp attorney had already anticipated such moves, including a clause in the settlement paperwork essentially saying, "If you try to sue, you'll surely lose. No one will represent you, and it'll only cost you more. Focus on your repayments instead." With that, we managed to avoid court altogether. I collected my things and left our shared home behind. Word of the whole ordeal somehow reached my workplace, leading to James being transferred to another branch, which helped put some necessary distance between us. Not long after, James reached out with a message that took me by surprise. "Kelly, I miss you. Life's empty without you. Can we try again? You can focus on your career all you want." But I knew better than to fall back into that cycle. "It's not going to happen. Goodbye," was my firm reply. Then came Sandra, trying to play the family card. "Kelly, think it over about my brother. What if we all live together again? Maybe we just misunderstood each other. I think things could be better." My response to her was just as resolute. "Sandra, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Goodbye." Both of them pleaded, but I stood my ground, cutting off all contact. Ryan, it turned out, received similar pleas, but also chose to ignore them. One day, passing my old house in a taxi, I noticed a "for sale" sign out front. With the settlement paid in full and all communications cut, I had no clue how James and Sandra were faring, nor did I want to know. As for me, I've moved on and up literally. I bought a condo and settled into my new life. Work has been fantastic, and I was recently promoted to regional director, a role I've long aspired to. Ryan and I have also grown closer, finding comfort and compatibility in each other's company. We've gone out a few times, discovering a surprising ease in our interactions. Life has vastly improved post-divorce, confirming my decision was the right one. As for what's developed between Ryan and me, well, that's a tale for another day.